For years, Iran and Israel fought in the shadows, covert operations, cyber attacks, assassinations, proxy clashes in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon and Gaza. That changed decisively between April 2024 and June 2025. In April 2024, Iran launched Operation True Promise, firing more than 300 drones and missiles at Israel in retaliation for an Israeli strike on its diplomatic compound in Damascus. Most projectiles were intercepted, but the operation marked Tehran's first direct large-scale strike on Israeli territory. On 13 June 2025, the confrontation escalated again. Israel initiated Operation Rising Lion, a sweeping attack on more than 100 targets inside Iran, including nuclear facilities at Natanz and other strategic sites, killing senior IRGC commanders and nuclear personnel. Multiple independent outlets and think tanks have since described this as the opening phase of the short but intense Iran-Israel war of June 2025. Israel framed the strikes as preemptive self-defense against what its leadership called an unacceptable Iranian nuclear threat. In a message amplified across Israeli and international media, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stressed that the State of Israel will not allow a regime whose goal is the destruction of the State of Israel to possess weapons of mass destruction. Tehran's response was immediate and rhetorical, as much as military. Iran launched large salvos of missiles and drones toward Israel and vowed that the strikes on its territory would not go unanswered. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei issued a pointed warning that Israel must expect severe punishment and that the powerful arm of the Islamic Republic's armed forces won't let them go unpunished. Those words still hang over the region. They also frame the central question: what form could that severe punishment realistically take? The June 2025 war and subsequent US involvement fundamentally altered Iran's strategic environment. Following Israel's strikes, the United States conducted its own operations against Iranian nuclear sites at Fordo, Natanz and Isfahan, reportedly using massive ordnance penetrator class bunker buster bombs. Western briefings and parliamentary research note that these strikes were intended to degrade Iran's ability to rebuild sensitive nuclear capabilities. In early November 2025, President Pezeshkian visited Iran's Atomic Energy Organization and signaled Tehran's response. Speaking to state media, he declared that destroying buildings and factories will not create a problem for us. We will rebuild. And with greater strength, a line that has become shorthand inside Iran for strategic resilience and long-term defiance. At the same time, Iran faces acute internal pressures, from sanctions to a deepening water and energy crisis. Yet its leadership continues to tie domestic endurance to regional deterrence, arguing that only credible missile power can prevent further Israeli or US strikes. The conversation in regional security circles has shifted accordingly, from whether Iran can hit Israel at all to whether it can threaten specific hardened assets that Israel has long considered untouchable. Israel maintains a long-standing policy of nuclear ambiguity, neither confirming nor denying possession of nuclear weapons. Independent assessments, including those cited by arms control organizations and the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, have for years suggested an arsenal on the order of dozens of warheads centered around the Shimon Peres Negev Nuclear Research Center near Dimona. Recent high-resolution satellite imagery published in 2025 by multiple outlets shows intensified construction and new structures at the Dimona complex. Analysts differ on whether this reflects life extension of existing facilities, modernization or possible expansion, but agree that the site is heavily fortified, deeply buried in parts and carefully defended. For Iran and its allies, Dimona and the broader Israeli nuclear infrastructure have long been framed as both a symbol and a strategic vulnerability. Iranian officials routinely describe Israel as the region's only nuclear-armed state, arguing that Tehran is held to stricter standards than an undeclared nuclear power. That narrative is central to how Iran sells its missile and nuclear programs domestically and across parts of the Arab and Muslim world. The emerging concern is whether Tehran now has or is actively pursuing bunker-busting ballistic capabilities that could make those rhetorical threats more credible. Iran already fields the Middle East's largest and most diverse ballistic missile portfolio. US commanders stated as early as 2022 that the arsenal exceeded 3,000 missiles. Since then, Iran has unveiled successive generations with improved range, accuracy, and survivability. Shahab Ghadar Emad series liquid fuel medium-range ballistic missiles, MRBMs, capable of reaching Israel, increasingly equipped with maneuverable re-entry vehicles for better precision. Pezeshkian and other Fateh family solid fuel missiles, shorter preparation time, road mobile, optimized to saturate missile defenses. Fateh hypersonic program presented by Iran as a leap beyond conventional missile defenses, though independent verification of full operational capability remains limited. Underground missile cities, hardened tunnels and silos designed to protect launchers and complicate preemptive strikes, repeatedly showcased by the IRGC for deterrent effect. These capabilities were tested in real combat conditions in 2024, 2025, when Iran and allied militias launched large salvos toward Israel in response to Israeli and US operations. Interception rates were high but not perfect. Both sides drew lessons. What is new and strategically significant are reports that Iran is integrating earth-penetrating, bunker-busting warheads onto selected ballistic platforms in response to the June 2025 US and Israeli strikes on its nuclear infrastructure. An early November 2025 Defense Security Asia report, drawing heavily on Iranian media claims and open-source imagery, argues that Tehran is testing specialized penetrator warheads for systems described as upgraded Khorramshahr and Emad variants, optimized to punch into reinforced underground targets before detonation. These reports have not been independently confirmed by Western governments or the IAEA, and some of the more dramatic performance claims may be exaggerated. But they align with three observable trends: post-strike doctrine shift. Iranian officials openly frame missile advances as direct responses to deep strike attacks on their own hardened sites. Technical trajectory: Iran has steadily improved guidance, materials, and solid fuel propulsion, all prerequisites for more sophisticated warheads. Propaganda value: signaling bunker buster capability feeds Tehran's narrative that it can impose real costs on adversaries' most sensitive assets. Taken together, they reinforce a perception, whether fully accurate or not, that Iran wants adversaries to believe their underground sanctuaries are no longer safe. This is the core of the revenge plan speculation that Khamenei's promised punishment might ultimately include credible threats against Dimona and other strategic sites. From western Iran to Dimona is well within the reach of existing Iranian MRBMs such as Ghadar, Emad and Pezeshkian. Open source assessments have long noted that several of these systems are technically capable of reaching deep into Israel. If new penetrator warheads are successfully engineered and paired with accurate delivery systems, Iran could, in theory, designing a true bunker buster warhead that can reliably penetrate tens of meters of reinforced concrete at hypersonic speed is extremely demanding. Even major powers like the US invested heavily over years to field weapons like the GBU-57 MOP. Iran has clear experience with ballistic missiles. It does not have a publicly demonstrated record of successful deep penetration strikes against heavily fortified underground facilities comparable to Dimona. Many details in pro-Iranian or speculative reporting are unverified and may overstate performance. Israel fields layered air and missile defenses, Iron Dome, David Sling, Patriot, Arrow 2-3 and work toward Arrow 4, integrated with US and allied early warning networks. After the 2024 and 2025 exchanges, those systems have been stress tested in real combat conditions. Iran might try to overwhelm defenses with saturation salvos, decoys and complex trajectories, but there is no guarantee such an attack would get through in militarily decisive fashion. Most importantly, attacking a facility widely associated with a state's nuclear weapons program, even if no nuclear explosion occurs, would cross a major psychological and strategic threshold. For that reason, many analysts view over-targeting of Dimona as a deterrent signal rather than an imminent operational plan. Tehran wants Israel, Washington and regional partners to factor in the risk, raising the cost of future attacks on Iran without necessarily executing such a strike. His warning that Israel should expect severe punishment sits alongside a long record of messaging that blends ideological hostility with strategic patience, using proxies, calibrated retaliation and political pressure rather than immediate all-out war. President Pezeshkian, publicly more cautious but fully aligned on resisting coercion, has tied Iran's response to both dignity and deterrence. In early November 2025, after visiting nuclear officials, he underlined that Iran seeks to rebuild and modernize despite strikes and sanctions, insisting its program remains civilian while signaling that pressure will not force capitulation. Khamenei sets the red lines and authorizes strategic retaliation. The IRGC develops and parades advanced missiles, including alleged bunker-busting variants, to show that those red lines have teeth. Pezeshkian's government presents this posture as defensive and lawful, aimed at deterring future attacks rather than provoking a new war. In that context, the idea of secret bunker-buster missiles targeting Israeli nuclear sites functions as part threat, part psychological warfare, and part insurance policy against the kind of devastating strikes Iran absorbed in June 2025. From Jerusalem's perspective, any Iranian move toward credible deep strike capabilities against Dimona or other hardened sites is intolerable. Israeli planners now operate on three assumptions frequently echoed by officials and analysts. Iran is determined to rebuild critical nuclear and missile infrastructure despite repeated strikes. Iran's missile accuracy and survivability are improving. Even if some claims are inflated, the only sustainable answer is a mix of preemptive action, relentless intelligence work, and ever stronger missile defense. Statements from Israeli leaders since June 2025 consistently reaffirm that Israel will act unilaterally, if necessary, to prevent Iran from acquiring either nuclear weapons or the capabilities that could fundamentally change the regional balance. It raises the spectre of strikes on nuclear or energy infrastructure that could cause cross-border contamination or economic chaos. It risks accelerating a broader missile and air defense arms race, pulling more states into a high-cost competition centered on deep penetration and hypersonic systems. Global powers, especially the US, Russia and China, see in this trend both danger and leverage. Danger of miscalculation, leverage in future negotiations where missiles, not just centrifuges, become the core bargaining chip. Iran has expanded and combat tested a large missile force capable of reaching Israel. Iran is signaling through state media, military parades and leaks that it is working on or fielding more advanced, possibly bunker-busting warheads. Iran's top leadership, especially Khamenei, has vowed serious retaliation for the June 2025 strikes and framed deterrence in morally and ideologically charged terms. Iran's president and officials stress they are rebuilding nuclear infrastructure with greater strength and will not bow to coercion, while insisting they are not seeking nuclear weapons. There is no open, verifiable evidence that Iran currently possesses a fully reliable ballistic system capable of destroying Israel's most protected nuclear facilities deep underground. Many of the most dramatic claims about new super-penetrator missiles come from Iranian or sympathetic outlets and should be treated cautiously until corroborated. Any deliberate Iranian strike on Dimona or similar sites would be a monumental escalation with unpredictable, potentially catastrophic consequences, making it a high-risk deterrent option, not an obvious first choice. In other words, what is often packaged as Khamenei's secret bunker-buster revenge plan is better understood as a layered strategy. Build and advertise enough long-range and potentially earth-penetrating capability that Israel and the US think twice before striking Iran's most sensitive assets again without crossing the line that would trigger an all-out regional war. That ambiguity is the point. It keeps adversaries guessing, reassures Iran's domestic base that its leaders are not passive, and positions Tehran for future negotiations from what it hopes will be a stronger hand